All right, Don, what are we going to be talking about tonight?
Okay, we get, I see a lot of posts on my group there where people are getting wax moths, they're getting dead outs. If you got more than half a dozen or a dozen hives, you know, you need to kind of go through that bee yard and visually look for problems. Now, what I do is I walk up and down the rows, and the first thing I look at is the entrance. If you got a bunch of wax cuttings right there at the entrance, more than likely they're robbed out and you've got a dead out there. So you need to get that stuff picked up. And then I've had people send me emails about they've had such a problem with small hive beetles. You know, I probably covered it before, but even a hive that's gotten really to the point where it's almost slimed, that wax can be saved. It sounds strange, but if you get about a 5-gallon bucket or get a tub, like a big old Rubbermaid tub, submerge those frames for a day or 2 days in water, kills all that larvas, and then just set them out in the sun. And the yellow jackets will actually pick out all that protein and carry it away. Now, I've done it before on fire ant hills, but you know, a lot of people don't have that luxury of having fire ants. So the ones that need fire ants to clean them frames, I'll send them to them. I got hills of them down here.
What are you going to charge for that, Don?
Well, I'll give them as a nominal fee, just to see where they got the southern ones at. And then, you know, this is the time of the year people should start thinking about if you're going to order packages, and getting good packages the key to good beekeeping. There's quite a few people out there. Well, I'm not going to say quite a few. There's at least 3 to 5 people that sell packages that they should be ashamed of what they're doing. When you get a package from any supplier, you should look at the bottom of that package. You know, 10, 20, 30 bees is a lot of dead bees in the bottom. When you get a package and you've got a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of dead bees, those bees have gone through a heat. Sometimes suppliers will shake those bees a day or sometimes 3 days ahead of time. And the average person just doesn't know what they're buying. I've replaced packages from several people. And one thing, I'm not putting any particular supplier down, but I don't advertise, period, for bees or sales of bees. If you're looking to buy bees from anybody, I mean, social media, you check out the person, find out, talk to people. Do you get good bees from this person? Are they dead? Are they alive? Are they quick to respond? These are the things that make a business. I stopped advertising in 1970. I cannot produce enough bees simply because I try to take care of each and every customer. Take care of them like if your life depends on it, because it actually will. And then this is the time of the year you should be treating your hives. I posted an old video on organic beekeeping and doing it with mineral oil and wintergreen. I mean, there's a lot of ways to treat your beehives. You could go treatment free, providing that you're doing an awful lot of splitting. So if you're splitting a lot, that's the natural way of breaking a mite cycle. Beetles, I mean, the best thing on beetles is just keep a hive strong. If you can't make your split strong enough in the fall, then don't make them till spring. I don't believe in putting oil in a hive because it actually attracts more beetles to it. And then if you got old comb, I had a student bring some stuff over he didn't want. He actually got some queens from me about 2 to 3 weeks earlier, and he come over with his long face and he was telling me that all the queens he put in didn't have no luck. They all flew out. So he goes back and he picks the stuff up and he brings it over. And I haven't had a chance to look. He just handed me some bags of wax to melt down. I go through the wax. I haven't seen wax that old, stretched out and black, worse than the blackest motor oil that you could see. So you could almost see mites crawling on that comb. It was so bad. I've talked about that on chats before. start changing out wax. Keep new foundation in there. That's the secret of them hives, to build them and keep them going. And then, the best thing to do is kind of lift the hive up. You don't have to go through, if you got 5 hives, you can spend the time. But if you got 50 or 500 and you're worried about they're not making it through, you can just lift them up. All you have to do is just lift them up an inch. If you got some weight there, then you're good to go. But if they're light, then you start putting some feed to them. Now, I've covered quite a bit of stuff, so I'm going to wait and let the people ask questions. Hopefully, you won't be talking about it after the chat, but now's the time to get the answers.
Paul, you're predictable.
I'm predictable.
Paul is. Paul's up first. Go ahead, Paul.
Hello, Don.
Hey.
I have a question, and it's a little confusing to me, but I hear a lot of people saying that the fall's coming, you have maybe 1 or 2 brood cycles left. Isn't the brood cycle continuous throughout the whole year?
Well, a queen is going to lay all year, but it's not going to be enough that if you start making splits this time of the year, you're going to have brood. I mean, right now in, the northern states, where you're at up there, you should have 1 or 2 frames at least 7 to 8 inch circle of brood on it right now. January, they might drop down a little bit, but I've never seen a hive completely shut down completely. There's always some activity going.
That's what I was confused about. I mean, you should always have brood in the hive if you have a good laying queen.
Well, the only way that you might not have any brood, if you get a dearth where there's no pollen coming in and there's no pollen reserves in the hive, I can see maybe that shut down for a month, 6 weeks, but normally they have enough reserves in there that they're going to lay some brood.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I noticed that I had a very weak hive. There was less than a frame of bees from them about 2 weeks ago, and they took that syrup in like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast they took it in there. And she started laying right away.
Well, there's a lot of people don't understand, like September, October, they go out there and they lift their hive up. Maybe they got a super on there and it's full of honey. And then you get a rainy spell like we've just had with these storms coming through. Them bees, if they're very strong, they can go through that super mighty fast. And all of a sudden you got bees that's starving, even when you got goldenrod coming in. So this is the time of the year to do a lot of checking on your hives, visual, or just go up and lift them up a little bit. You don't have to go through there. A lot of times people make more mistakes going through this time of the year because they're worried about their queen laying. And they get in there and they bump the queen, and then there's nobody around selling queens. Look at the front of your hive. It tells you a story what's going on in the hive. If they're bringing pollen in, more than likely you got a queen in there laying.
Well, that's the same thing like you said during the dearth. I mean, you got to, you're feeding them sugar syrup, but do you also have to throw a piece of pollen patty in there?
I don't personally. I won't start putting pollen patties on. If we've had a cold winter, I'll start putting them on in January. But I'll take a pre-made pollen patty and I'll cut it 8 ways. I want them to consume it in 24 hours. I would rather go back in there and add some. If you got a weak hive and you don't have enough bees consume that pollen, you're going to get ate up with beetles really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I had that problem on that weak hive as well. The beetles started taking over in there. And I didn't want to put any pollen substitute on there at all. I thought there would be enough bees in there where they could deal with it on their own. But
sometimes if you got a weak hive, it's better if you got multiple hives, equalize out your hives. That's what we have to do sometimes September and October. We'll go through a yard that's got 200 in there, and we might have to go through 50 and equalize them out. You got a good, strong hive, pull some brood out, throw it into a hive that needs a little brood. But now, I don't believe I'd want to add pollen patties this time of the year.
I was thinking of doing that, but I was worried that if I figured I'd give them a little boost, maybe pull a frame out of brood with nurse bees on there. But do you have to worry about with the queen if they with fighting, or
The main thing I would do is make sure you don't move the queen from one hive to the other. If you're worried about them fighting, the best thing to do is just take a light sugar water and maybe a drop or two of vanilla, or you can use like essence of oil. Vanilla is usually most common. Everybody's got that. Put a few drops of that in and just mist each frame you're going to exchange. And I've never had a problem, with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking of doing that because some of my, my nukes are really strong. I mean, I have, oh, forget it. They're 3 high, and I need to cut them down for the winter. So I was thinking of, like you said, equalizing some weak hives with bees. But I was more worried that, I don't want them killing my queen in my weak hive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So spray them down with a little vanilla in the sugar syrup.
Yeah, just mist them down. You don't have to soak them down. Now, in the springtime, when we're combining hives and equalizing out in the springtime to make up nukes and stuff, we'll put on a little bit heavier syrup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
All
that
right,
way
thanks.
you don't get those bees in the air.
Yeah. All right, Don.
Okay, get those hands up, people. We don't have any web questions tonight, so I'm relying on you guys with your questions. TikTok. There we go. Todd, go ahead, Todd. Unmute.
Hi, Don.
Hey.
Quick question. I was going through a hive this morning, and I lifted out the frame, and I kind of pinched a queen cell. Actually, not pinched, but I kind of flattened it just a tiny bit. Is that little difference going to kill it?
Well, it's not going to do it any good, but this time of the year, I wouldn't worry too much about queen cells.
Well,
Because
yeah,
you're probably not going to have enough drones to do any good, and not doing.
no, I don't have any drones anyway around here. I think the smoke kind of chased everything out, but all of a sudden I've got like 3 or 4 hives that swarmed on me, and I think it's because of the smoke.
The smoke can do it.
So I don't know. I just barely flattened one little section of that cell, and I don't know if they're going to ignore it.
Well, if you got drones and you're worried about mating, years ago, I dropped a container. It had about 50, 75 ripe queen cells. I had them sitting on my truck seat, and somebody pulled out in front of me, and I hit the brakes, and I didn't think about it, and they just rolled all over, hit the floor. And, in my mind, I said total loss, but I was surprised. I had, 70, 80% that did hatch. I put 2 cells per nuke when I was making the splits and stuff, but it's hard to say. It depends on how far along that queen is and how bad it can be bumped.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's a little late now in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of drones. I actually saw a couple this morning, but not like a normal year. So all these fires have got
time of year to check your hive and do your OA treatments and get them ready going in the winter.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to combine a couple, I think. Yeah, otherwise they're just going to die off.
If you got enough hives, why don't you just equalize some of the hives out?
Yeah, that's what I mean by combining them.
Combine them,
Yeah.
To me, combining, people say put a newspaper and, to me, that's totally backing up. So I'm not a big believer in that. I'm here to make numbers, not to decrease numbers. So there's a reason, the hive has dwindled down like that. Either you got a bad queen or you got bad foundation in there. There's always some little thing that people ain't even thinking about.
Yeah.
This is a good time to do an alcohol wash and see what you're working with.
Oh, I did last week. I'm at 0.66 average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I'm good there.
Yeah.
I just really think it's the smoke. Yesterday and today are the first days that we've seen the sun in 2 weeks. Actually, I've seen it. It's been crazy.
It's going to be a rough year in the springtime with what's going on everywhere, that people are going to have such a shortage of bees. So you're thinking about selling bees, get them hives ready. If they look like a bee, you're going to be able to sell them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, over to Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
Got to get unmuted.
He's trying. Unmute, Jay.
There you go.
go. You're still,
Am I not talking?
you're just breaking up a little bit. Try it again.
As far as the hives, moving frames around to help strengthen the hive, we did a couple of days. I was doing a training session, and I was showing him, we pull the hive or pull the frame out, moved it over with the nurse bees on it, set it in there. I said, look, they're just working. They're not affecting any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd take the frame out of one hive and then the frame out of another hive, move it over. It worked good.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
As far as getting ready for winter, I know it's probably still early, but how soon do we need to switch over to dry feed?
Well, if your hive has been, storing honey and your hive is healthy, I don't see why you should have to put any dry feed on. That is usually an emergency thing.
Well,
A lot of people do it,
do.
whether they want to do, that need it or not. And
Yeah.
my thinking is if you pile sugar up there, you're looking for an anthill there sooner or later. So I don't do it unless, they run out.
In the past, I've gone ahead and I've got some spacers and I put 4 or 5 pounds of sugar on top of it just so they've got it for emergency feed. But I don't leave a lot of honey in there either.
Yeah. Well, if you're selling bees, you're trying to make brood, you're getting like me.
Yeah.
I mean, when you was showing some people how to work your hives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do a training session.
When people come here and they do that, and I've had probably in the last 15 years, and right away they'll say, "Where's the arrows?" So what arrows? There's no Indians live around here. Well, where's your numbers?
Yeah.
They got to have arrows pointing which way to put the frame and a number. They got to go back to the same position. I mean, I can almost write a book on learning from these people that come here with all these things,
Well, I tell them, what I've learned pretty well is from you and then my own experience with it. But I do a lot of training, especially the ones that are buying hives from me.
Right.
I offer them a 4-hour training session. And this guy coming in today, he was just wanting to find out if he wanted to get in the bees. But by the time he left, he's going to buy about 5 hives.
There you go.
And then turn around and buy more next year.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, so
I was just kinda
building
curious.
your hives and getting your boxes and stuff ready for spring because you're not going to have time.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. I'm moving around, getting them all lined up. Again, today we took a couple of them that was weak and we beefed them up with some brood out of the other hives. So we're getting them ready and in shape for it. I was just kind of curious if it would be worth it to go ahead and put the sugar on there, and because it looks to me like we're going to start an early winter here.
We're probably going to have a hard winter, but I'm in a believer of, why do something unless you have to? And I don't like to put sugar on top. I mean, there's people that do it every year. I just got more important things for time-wise, what you have to do.
Well, I've pretty well been able to put it on one time and then not have to come back and put more on. Of course, I check it periodically.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want them starved to death.
That answer your question, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, over to Ernest. Go ahead, Ernest, unmute.
Yeah, it's time to get ready for winter. I've been getting mine ready. I was putting on mouse guards, and there's a little show and tell. This is what I make up, and it reduces it, and also it's got a mouse guard on there. I use that half-inch hardware cloth, and that tends to work good for me. So I just got all of them on today, and bees is pretty nice to me considering it's middle of the day and everything. So I went out other mornings doing some, and man, I had some angry bees. It's overcast, foggy, and no smoker. So that wasn't a good time, but today they were able to and, got all my entrance closed down, and I've been feeding them. I think I got those gallon buckets like you're using there, Don, and I've been using those, and that worked good with those lids I got. So thank you, Greg, for sending those along, and got them right away, and I got a gallon on each of them, and I only need a couple gallon probably at those nukes, so I won't need too much. So that's working out real good. The ones I had before, those commercial ones that had the screen in it, they leaked too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was really proud the way this worked out. It worked out real good, and I can feed a lot of them, feed them quick. So
How you putting your holes in those plugs? Are you drilling them or are you pushing with a push pin?
I push the push pin, and then sometimes that don't work. So then I use a 16th drill bit and just hit it real quick and don't try to drill it out very much.
Yeah.
And that works good too. So
The 16th is a little bit big. See, we got a lot of hot sun on our buckets down here. And we was using the 16 gauge staple. And what I done is I shot one through a piece of 3/4 board, 3/4 by 3/4, about an inch long. And when the staple comes to the other side, I just break one leg off, and then I have something to put my thumb against, and I can push a hole in those lids or those plugs like that. But with the hot weather and the heat like that, the plastic seems to go back to the natural, close that hole up. So I got what they call a master drill set, and it's the smallest little drill in that box. I mean, there's like 4 big rows, and they go metric, wire size, decimal size, every drill that was ever made. And I get about the 3rd or the 4th one from the smallest, and I just put it on an air drill. I got a small, like a Dremel, but it runs on air. And I just run it through a couple times through that hole, and it kind of cleans out those lands on the drill, pulls that extra plastic out, and it doesn't close back where it'll work there. But we've tried some with that small 16, and on a hot day, it'll cause too much of that syrup to come out. And if there's a honey flow of any kind, then you end up getting too much liquid inside that hive, because they won't pull it. If there's a honey flow at all, they won't pull that syrup. It'll just start running out of the front. Then you get yellow jacket problem.
well, what I did, I had those 2-gallon buckets I got from the Acme store, and I just turn those up over top of it, and that keeps the sun off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get that expansion, and that tends to work good. But it's another thing that you have to handle, though. You know,
Yeah. When you take 1 yard or 2 yards and you got 200 or 300 buckets, buying a gallon bucket is tough. But then buying an extra bucket just to cover it, or some people take an empty box and put it over the top, with a lid on it to, keep the sun off. There's just too much extra equipment you have to maintain.
Yeah, well, I had these buckets, so that worked out good for me to have something to keep the sun off. So, like you said, the expansion in there, when the sun comes up, it forces out quicker than they can eat it. So,
some of the companies, if you buy a large amount of them buckets, they'll break the price down. I think our next order is probably going to be 1,000 to 3,000 buckets, because you got to have the buckets. You got to have everything ready when the season starts. You ain't got time to wait on this or wait on that.
yeah, well, I'm set up for next year, so I should be in pretty good shape. I bought extra buckets, extra lids, so yeah, I appreciate that. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's all I have for now.
Okay. And let's see, next up is David Smith. Go ahead, David. Unmute. There you go.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, we
Yep.
hear you.
All right. Thank you, Don, for having me. I've watched every single one of your chats now, and so I'm a new beekeeper, so I know absolutely nothing. except what I see on your chats, and I put up a 10 frame hive that I got, and it attracted a swarm in one day. And so that was in the end of July, and they're doing great. I talked to Pat a couple times, and she's giving me pointers. So, I'm very grateful. But one question I did have was, I want to be able to keep them eventually in 8 frames, but I was wondering, is it better to, when I make the splits, to build them up in the 5 frames and then go into 8 frames, or is it all right to just be in the 8 frames?
Your 5 frames are going to build up a lot better, a lot faster. And you can leave them in the 5 frame, because if you're going to make a lot of splits, that 5 frame will turn you out more splits than a 10 frame because of the heat loss and the large size of the box. If you're going to go to 8 frame, you might get you a router and put a slot down the middle and a piece of plywood on the bottom and convert it to 2 5-frame nukes. Just have opposing entrances. You just drill you an inch or inch and a half hole in the front and one in the back, and that way you have 2 5-frame nukes. And if it doesn't work out, you can always pull that piece out. Use a political sign or a piece of paneling. Knock a piece of plywood off the bottom, and you got a 10-frame box again. Put a piece of screen over each hole, and you got ventilation, so you're not really losing nothing. But, as we get older, and what depends on what you want to do. If you're going to make honey, make bees, or, pollinate, it depends on what size boxes. We get a lot of people that, 40 plus or women are small. They can't handle 10-frame boxes. I mean, it's tough. So I've had women come here and just tell me that those boxes are too much, and they never knew that you could run all one size in the bee yard, all mediums. And one lady says, man, that's great. I don't have all these different sizes. Everything's interchangeable. Don't have to go up and look for this frame, that frame. So, but I tell a lot of students, if you're going to sell bees, run both sizes, mediums and deeps. That way, somebody has back problems or, handicap, they'll buy mediums before they'll buy deeps. So there's different options to look at.
Yeah, I got the 10 frame just because it was a really good deal, and I just wanted to get started because I've got no experience. I've only been in this hive one time, and they were doing great. The queen was laying real good pattern, nice big circle. So I was really excited that it's doing so well. Right now, and here in Washington State, we're at the end of our season. I mean, they're taking in sugar now, because the Japanese knotweed is pretty much done with its blooming. I've noticed also, some older bees, crawling around on the ground. I'm guessing they're older. Their wings look pretty good, but they just don't seem to, they're thinking about dying or whatever. Might be older bees. I didn't see any drones whatsoever in the swarm when I got it. I'm sure they were there, but I haven't seen them kick any drones out, because usually they're all over on the ground and that. I haven't seen any drones.
You're finding a lot of bees dead on the ground this time of the year?
No. I'll get like 1 or 2 bees that here and there, So I'm guessing they've seen the end of their life, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They look healthy. They look, they don't look all sucked up or anything. So my guess is that they're just at the end of their life. But they've been doing a lot of washboarding last couple days in the evening, and we've been having rain and got the smoke over here. So
one thing I would do is find a bee club close to you and go there and try to find somebody to come and work with you. But you shouldn't find any dead bees in front of your hive. A lot of people don't understand. If you got a healthy hive, you're going to have dead bees. The bees are going to pick those dead ones up, and they're going to fly out a couple 100 yards and drop them. But when your population start dropping too low, then you're going to start noticing bees closer to the hive. And then if you're finding a lot of them right out at the end, you got a bad kill off, or you got pesticide, or the population's so bad that they're not taking them out very far, they're just dropping them. So those are things that are cues to me that I look for. A lot of people don't think about it, but that's something to watch for.
Yeah, just every once in a great while, I'll get like one bee, or maybe on occasion 2 bees I'll see, you know. But that's why I haven't been alarmed by it. The bees quantity seems to be just fine. When I first got the swarm, like I said, I knew nothing about bees whatsoever, and I had 3 deeps high, and you know they were slow building up in there. But even at 3 deeps high, she had a really good brood pattern going, and I knocked it back down. I consolidated it when I got in there, and I went all through it, and so I'm hopeful that they'll make it through the winter. We don't have real freezing weather. Our major problem is the moisture, and so that's where I got to watch out. I'll be what is it called, mountain sugaring in the winter time, so that they'll have that extra feed and also absorbs moisture too. So that's the plan.
Hopefully it all works out for you.
All right. Thank you again for all your videos.
Okay, you're
Very,
welcome.
very educational. Thank you.
Okay. Over to Patricia. Go ahead, Pat.
Hi, everybody. I had a question for Jay. You said you had people there today and you were teaching them. Are you charging? Because that's something Don taught me. Don't give away your time. And it was hard to get brave enough to say. But one of the things also, I do the same thing when people buy bees. I do training and all, but try to schedule a couple together or something so that charge $10 extra or something. But Don will tell you, time is money. And if you're giving away your time, you're giving away your money. Don, maybe you could talk about that a little bit, because it's hard to figure out how to charge, how much to charge, and how to work that out.
Well, I've had quite a few students that's been here and maybe take 5, 10, 15 lessons over a period of a month, 3 months, and they're looking, to make a little extra money. Most people, that if you have a place where you can set up some hives, the easiest thing to do is get a mini nuke, a 5-frame nuke, a deep, a super, a medium, different size frames, and basically hold each one up and tell them what they're used for and the advantages and disadvantages of them. Get a hive tool, show them how to use a hive tool. Get a smoker. I mean, most people that I've had students, they'll take 20 people, 25 people, and they charge them $25, which a lot of places charge $100 or $125. You might get 30 minutes out in the bee yard watching somebody work, and then about 2 or 3 hours watching videos. Well, it's hard to pause a video and ask questions. So people like to touch things. Let them pick up an empty box. If you're dealing with men and women and kids, maybe handicapped people, one thing I've done is take a 10-frame box, weigh out 2 cement blocks and put it in there. Take an 8-frame, put a cement block in it. Take different size boxes, put a piece of plywood on there and weigh it. That way, tell them, come over and pick up. You want to run nothing but 10s? Pick this up and see if you're going to do that all day. That gives them an actual feeling. People like to touch things rather than just look at diagrams and watch videos. So, I mean, you can do several classes like that and pay for your time, and buy you some equipment.
What's a good starting rate?
Many people don't know how to light a smoker.
Yeah. What's a good starting rate for charging for giving a class like that? Like,
I would charge.
we're not at your experience level, so.
Well, even a beginner that's come here and just learned the different techniques, different terminology of boxes, it's worth $20. Most bee clubs is $25, $50, what they call boot camps or introductory courses. And their introductory courses is, I don't know, you could probably learn 5 minutes here what they try to teach in 2 or 3 hours or 2 or 3 days. I mean, they want to stand there and tell everybody how great they are and how much honey they produce, and they don't even know how to answer questions. People want to know how they can do bees, not how you can do bees.
Mostly I hear them tell me how good they are, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I do with them is I charge $100 for 4 hours, and it's anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. I tell them 4 hours, but I tell them when you're done, we're done. And it's one-on-one, up to 1-on-5. And I start out in my shop, and we go through and I show them the components of the hive. We'll talk about it a little bit. We'll spend 30 minutes or so in the shop. And after that, we're in the bee yard. I go through the first box, and then I turn around and say, all right, now it's your turn. And we just walk through, and I make them talk to me about what they're seeing, and I point out things to them. And we talk about hive management, as far as boosting a hive from another hive if you have to. Depending on how well they're picking it up, we'll talk about splitting. But it just, I try to give them an overall, here's how you manage the hive. And then if they want to stay late, we'll stay late. If not, but most of these that go through it end up buying bees from me, so I'm getting extra on top of that. And then if I
That's pretty good.
If I have to go somewhere to help them, I charge them $25 an hour from the time I leave the house. And we'll go work on their bees, do whatever.
Yeah,
I think if
that's
you're going
pretty
to do a basic class, you can do the ones the way you're doing yourself. But I found that if you got basic people there, they don't know what a bee from a yellow jacket or a hornet is.
Right.
So if you're just talking about equipment, how to feed them, how to maintain them, and don't talk at all about how to make splits. I mean, I get that here, and it's strange to explain that to people. They come here, they want to learn how to graft first day. They don't have a basic idea. And I tell them, you cannot ride a tricycle, and you're here, you want to ride a high performance motorcycle first day. So let them get used to the basic stuff, and then that may be your second course, an intermediate course, or in an advanced course, And
I'll do some of that with them if they want to come back and do it again. I've got some that's been back a couple of times, and we get a little deeper into it each time. And then I normally work out the hives that I've got set up that I've done splits on that are my nukes to sell. That's where I do most of my training because they're not quite as strong, so we could work on with no gloves, the whole 9 yards. When they come back for the second round, then we go get in my hives that are set up, and they're a little bit different temperament because they're good, strong hives. But I've enjoyed working with them, and I enjoy doing that as much as I do anything. And I know Don does. I can tell the way he acts.
Well, I'm trying to turn out beekeepers that is going to pass on the techniques, because nowadays there's just so much technical stuff out there that, people just don't have that hands-on anymore.
Yeah.
That's true. And, it's like the guy I was talking to today. He said, what do I need? I said, you need a hive tool, and this is the tool I prefer. It's just a basic hive tool. You need a smoker, and you need a bee suit because they're going to get upset at you at some point in time. And when they do, you need to be able to work them or go back home and say, I'll work them another day. But I tell them, I say, these are the basics you need. I show them how to light the smoker. I've got it down to where I can get it going real quick. So I'll teach them how to light their smoker, and then we'll set it on the tailgate and go out there and work the bees and never use the smoker most of the time. So, but they know how to do it at that point.
A lot of times classes like that, you'll end up, if you got 15, 20 people, half of them are going to buy 1 or 2 hives, from you. And then they're going to bring their friends. And that's the problem that you end up running in. People come to my place and they see rows and rows of boxes. And I say, well, I don't have no bees for sale or don't have no honey for sale. And they say, well, all in boxes? They don't understand. Everything gets pre-sold and it's marketed out.
Well, I've still got it. I've still got hives that are ready. I hadn't got the point where I'm selling enough to do that yet. But, and they'll come in if they want to bring somebody with them, then I give them a discount on the second person. But it works pretty good.
All right. Anything else, Pat?
No, that was all. Just want to talk about it a little bit because I think it's a good market for us, and not all of us are comfortable teaching. So start practicing on your family. You got a captive audience there.
All righty, and we're gonna go over to, where'd he go? Matt Moss. Go ahead, Matt.
You hear me?
Yep.
The only question I've really got is how late in the season can you get brood out of another hive without getting the winter bees?
Well, it depends on where you're at. For one thing, you know, we can do it all the way up in the end of September. I mean, it depends on the hive and what it's set up for. If you got hives that are set up for high production of making bees and you're running doubles, I mean, you can pull 4 or 5 frames out there and equalize other hives out. But if you got a hive that's set up and you don't work it that often, it's basically a honey producing hive. Right now on a 10-frame hive, you might only have 6 frames of brood in the bottom, and then the second box is 3/4 full of honey. So it just depends on where you're at and, you know, what you're trying to do.
Well, you know, I'm in Mississippi, but I've got a few hives that's probably strong enough, but like to boost them just a little bit. And I've got several 8 frames, double 8s, and I didn't want to get into them and start getting the winter bees, but I didn't know how late. You know, this is basically October. You know.
Yeah. If you're splitting in the same yard, I wouldn't really worry too much about losing winter bees, because what you're considering winter bees is going to be field bees. So if you're making the split in the same yard and you're not closing them up, you know, you're going to get drift back. So you're going to get a lot of field bees, you know, or your winter bees fly back to the original hive.
Yeah, but what I was talking about, not necessarily doing splits. I've just got a hive over here, maybe it ain't got but 2 frames, and I'm wanting to add a little brood to it. I mean, am I hurting that hive by stealing the brood from it?
If you're adding to another hive, you're not going to hurt the hive you're adding it to. It just depends. If you got a good, strong hive.
No, but am I hurting the one I stole it from?
Not really. I've had people say you got to have a double deep 10 go through the winter. And I started preaching 5-frame stuff in '92, and people laughed at me. Now, people find out a 5-frame will actually go through winter much better than a 10-frame. You know, so, you know, you could talk to students I have anywhere in the country, and they're going to start telling you the same thing.
Yeah. You know, I've talked to you on other chats. I'm in the process of moving some of my hives over about 150 yards to a different spot. I've got where stands built up and all down, and I've noticed I've got a couple of them that's a little weak, so I was going to boost them, and which you sort of answered that question. But when I was moving them, I noticed there were several of them, you know, going back to the original spot. So I got up there and grabbed me a little 2-frame box and set it over there where that one was sitting at, and went over and looked this evening, and I've got one 2-frame box that is slap full.
Yeah. You've gathered all the field bees.
Now, what can I do with that? I mean,
leave it there.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying, do I need to be adding brood to it? Need to add a frame of honey to it? They just frames in there with cone on it. There's nothing in the cone.
You don't have a queen in there? No eggs?
There's nothing in there right now because I just roughly set that over. I moved the hive yesterday.
Yeah. Well, all you got is field bees. They're going to just die. If you don't have drones, you can't make a queen there.
Well, I've got some queens. I've got some queens I can add to it. I think I've got 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'd put a queen in there.
Do I need to add some brood to it, or
if that hive is packed like you said, then why would you want to add bees to it?
Well, I mean, it's just 2 frames and it's got cone. It's just cone I put in there. There's nothing in it.
Well, if you're feeding them, they're going to fill it.
And I put thick sugar water on top of them.
Yeah, they're going to fill it, but you have to add a mated queen to it.
Well, that's what I had in mind on doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
I didn't have time this evening when I come in. But I've got 4 or 5 little 2-frame hives.
I would
Oh.
change those into 5-frame hives. If it's full of bees, I'd put them in a 5-frame because I don't think a 2-frame is going to have enough bees to go through the winter in Mississippi. I might be wrong, but I would go with a 5-frame.
All right, well, let me ask you this. I've got 4 or 5 little 2-frame hives that's got queens in them.
Yeah.
Not a lot of bees in them. They're too weak.
Mhm.
What would it do just to grab one of them and add it to that box where I moved it?
You can do that, but you'd have to cage the queen, put your sugar in there and let them come out like a regular,
Yeah.
engaged queen.
Just cage her and put them 2
Right.
together and
Yeah.
go.
Mhm.
See, I've got 4 more to move, and they're all these is 8-frame hives, double 8s.
Do you know how to make queen candy, or how you going to introduce?
Oh yeah. I've been
Yeah.
making queen candy all year, reusing them bee cages.
Are you using a Denton three hole?
No, I'm using the what is that?
plastic?
The California one. It's wood.
California minis?
Yeah.
I would get you some Dentons myself. That's, I'm not big on those California minis or those little JBZ plastic junk. I would get a 3-hole. Instead of making 1 hole full of candy, I would do it half or a third of the way and press it up towards the hole, put the queen in there. That way she's going to come out a lot faster. But there's hardly any way you can regulate those mini nukes, those mini California minis. I hate them.
You don't have much luck with them.
I hate them.
Well, I guess my question is, why do you hate them?
Well, can you regulate how much sugar you're putting in them?
No, you just fill the little tube up, and that's all you got.
There you go.
But is it not enough?
No.
I mean, that's the question.
Mhm.
But okay. So in other words, you would just get that hive to where I moved it at. Like I said, that 2-frame where I moved that hive, that little 2-framer is full.
Yeah.
And these other ones that's
Yeah.
got my queen in it, they probably like 1 to 1.5 frame of bees.
Mhm.
Just combine the 2, cage the queen.
Mhm.
That'd be the easiest way to do that.
Yep.
And like I said, I've got 3 or 4 more I got to move. I guess I could do the same thing with them too then.
Well, if you got other hives that's weak, that's got queens in there, when you move a strong hive, just take the weak one and set it in its place. All the field bees are going to come in one at a time and they'll introduce themselves. They ain't going to fight and kill the queen.
Will they not?
No.
Okay. I figured they'd kill the queen. I don't know. Like I said, I've been handling bees for about 1.5 years. There's a lot of stuff I don't know yet. Oh, okay. That's, guess, all my questions.
Okay.
Okay. Up to David and Tracy. Go ahead, guys.
Hey, good evening, Don. How are you?
Okay.
Good. Hey, we've been doing lots of practicing every week on grafting, and have gotten probably 70, 80% take on the grafts up till about a couple of weeks ago. And they seem to, and nothing's changed too much that I can tell, but we're down to about 40% on the graft. We're still doing splits, and we get about 70 or 80% on the take there. But is it normal this time of year to start to see less productive grafting, or is there something I should be looking at?
Are you adding new bees?
Yeah, every week I bring in a new frame of brood that has no eggs in it.
No. You got to add new bees, nurse bees.
Yeah.
How many cells are you trying to graft in? If you do it in a 5-frame or you do it in an 8-frame, you're grafting your cells in the.
Yeah, we do it in a 5-frame, and it's I guess 30 grafts is what we do. Maybe I just need to shake more bees as well as have some emerge from brood.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And how late can I go into the season doing grafting?
You can graft year round, but if you don't have no drones, you're not going to get no mating.
Okay.
That's the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, we got plenty of drones. That looks good. So okay, good tip. Hey, and then second question, in relation to, we have a few production hives still. We've gone, mostly nukes now, so we're up to about 160 nukes, nuke hives. But we do have some production hives for honey, and I think you said a few chats back that you could split those down into like 5 frames.
Yeah.
When would you do that, Don?
If you're going to risk more bees, you can do it with queen cells, ripe queen cells. Are you candling your queen cells? Or are you just grafting and putting them in?
Just grafting and putting them in.
Start candling them. That way you know that they're ready to hatch.
Okay, so make sure they're active and they're alive.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Now, I would shake at least a pound and a half of bees every time you put a graft in. 38, that's nothing. We put 90 to a 5-frame box, and we're getting about 95%, 98.
Good. Okay.
You got your incubator built yet?
No, I don't. That's kind of next step here toward the end of the season. But as quickly as I get them ready to go, about day 10, I take them out and go plug them into the new split. So that's what I've been doing. But the candling is a good tip.
Yeah, I would, until you get to where you can get them all to come out within 24 hours, then, you need to candle them, because if you're out at work or doing something, you only takes one in there to hatch out and starts cutting the rest of them down.
Yeah, I've had a few bad experiences that way.
Got to maintain. If you watch the video where where you time out your box, you can get them all to come out within an hour once you, practice at it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look for that too. Good. No, that's it. Appreciate the help. It's been a very good year for us. Thanks to you.
Well, you must have learned something.
Yeah, we did. More to learn. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, over to Greg. Go ahead, Greg. You had something to say about the buckets, I believe?
Yeah, thanks for having me down again, Don. It was, I've been putting it off for way too long, coming down to get fructose, but you guys hooked me up with a real nice tote, and got that back, and I within the first 3 minutes of dispensing fructose out of that tote, I just was kicking myself I didn't do it sooner. It's just, you talk about a game changer. Jay Gilmer's over there, he's laughing because he already bit the bullet there and switched earlier, but I didn't have it. It was too hard to get. So I had to come down and see you on some sawmill stuff and take some other lessons anyway. So I thought, well, I'll just bring a tote back. Trouble is I ended up selling most of it off, and I don't have a whole lot for myself. So
I had that problem, Greg.
I got a real bad problem. It's hard to say no.
I give 3 classes on how to teach you how to say no, but no one listens.
You tell me that every time I'm down there, and it's just, I'm learning, I'm still making mistakes with it. We end up running our bee yard way super thin. And so everything's kind of, strung out and scraggly looking right now. And if not for the fructose and the bucket feeders, I'm not sure I'd be in even worse shape. So between the fructose and the bucket feeders, that's about what keeps the bee yard in shape right now. And then being fall on the farm, all the loose ends are trying to be tied up, and you're burning candles at both ends. And but that's just the way that it goes. Because we run everything so thin, we're trying to learn and do better and have resource hives to pull from when we're doing our grafting, and not be robbing Peter to pay Paul and end up empty in both pockets. That's not a real good spot to be on. But if you haven't already found yourself in that position, you will. It's just a matter of learning how far you can push your limits there and on your resources. But with those buckets, before we were mixing a real heavy 2-to-1, and we can get by with an 18 gauge staple, single hole, and that worked great all year. With this fructose, 1/16 inch staple, one little piercing, seems to work out pretty good. But I no sooner got those buckets put on, and now we're dropping down to 39 degrees tonight. And it's just all of a sudden, it's like we're flirting with winter, and we haven't in fall the leaves haven't even turned yet. So what that means for us here in Ohio is while goldenrod is on, these temperatures are dropping so hard that it's causing the bees to cluster up. And then when it gets warm, they're breaking cluster, they're feeding, and then they're trying to go out early morning when the dew is still on everything. It's still cold. It's not 50, you know, when the nectar would be normally available. So I think it is going to affect our nectar flow. So once again, I feel like I got lucky and that I got the fructose when I did, and that we're running those buckets, because I don't know that I can count on the goldenrod flow this year to bolster up my already scraggly looking yard. So, you know, sometimes you make enough mistakes where you just get enough things line up in your favor to where it just barely, you know, saves your rear end there. So, so we're hoping that, you know, some of these run real, do okay in the winter. They're real thin. A lot of them are going to be in single 5-frame mediums going through the winter time. We've had pretty decent luck. I know I've said it before, but when Don gave the advice years ago, when I asked him what he would do different if he was in Ohio, and it was to switch to single 5-frame boxes, that really has made a huge difference. The only thing that I'd probably do, that I do maybe a hair different than Don being up here in Ohio, Don's smarter than all of us, obviously. So he probably doesn't let his resources get so scraggly. Because my resources are so thin, one thing I think that Jay was mentioning, Jay's probably suffering from the same situation there, not saying no, and scraggly hives, you get to about October and November, and you've just barely got enough bees to make up a box. And that's where the dry sugar has saved my bacon in the rear. And what's interesting is you look at those bees in like January or February, you get a day where it's like happens to be like 51, 52. You crack open that lid, all the bees are on the up top eating the sugar, and they have plenty of honey in there. So for some reason it's almost like they know that sugar is a savings account. They can draw on it if they need it. So that kind of saved our rear end before too. So so in most parts of the country, you know, everyone's starting to see weather changing. A lot of folks are dealing with wildfires, and I would only assume this spring is, you know, if 2020 wasn't one of those wacko weird years on every other account possible, I got a feeling spring of 21 is also going to be pretty interesting for beekeepers. There's going to be I think there's going to be a lot of shortages on bees availability. And I hate to see it, but I would imagine you're going to start seeing materials and resources, boxes, frame, wax, bees themselves, or the prices are going to start to increase too. So if you haven't already made arrangements or you're looking at getting bees, you might start thinking about talking with your supplier and seeing what kind of availability that they might have. But I'll just keep on rambling here. The weather's kind of throwing me for a loop, and I'm just, you know, I guess all I'm trying to say is you have to do your best, look at what you're working with there, and try to just keep doing better year after year. So if you are doing those bucket feeders, David and Tracy chimed in there. They had some issues with those plugs leaking. What folks are finding is with all the shortages too, on Amazon, a lot of those 50 millimeter hole saws aren't even available. And so a new one every week will come available, and it won't be one of the ones that I'm using. So I ordered some of them because I had a couple people say, what's going on with these plugs? They're leaking. Well, it turns out when you actually look at the description on the 50 millimeter plugs, or I'm sorry, the 50 millimeter hole saw on Amazon, when you look at the picture, a lot of the times it says almost 50 millimeter, or the actual will say 50 millimeter, but when they get them home and measure them, you put dial calipers on them, they'll actually measure out like 1.99, almost 2 inches. So they're not actually a 1.97 or a 50 millimeter. It doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, but we're talking about, you know, 2 wraps of Teflon tape difference, and that's huge. And Mr. Prater here on the chat, I think he reached out. Same thing happened to him too, and it was his idea. So if that's happening to you, if that's all you can get is those odd size hole saws, Todd figured out that you can just take Teflon tape and just wrap it around that inside neck of that plug and then snap it in. Problem solved. So unfortunately, a lot of those hole saws are coming from China, and they've been hard to come by, and the ones that when they are available, they're not quite right. They're sized differently. So if you find that a plug is leaking, make sure it's actually 50 millimeter or 1.97 inches. If it's a little bit bigger than that, just do what Todd's taught folks to do. Wrap it with Teflon, and you'll be good to go. But if you're on the fence about fructose, man, you'll be if you're feeding more than 20 or 30 hives, you'll really be thankful. So thanks again, Don, for all the lessons. And it takes us a little longer to get with the program sometimes, but when we do, we're sure glad we had someone like you to steer us in the right direction. So thanks again, Don, and for everyone else on the chat who's been buying plugs, thank you.
I hear all the time is people, they're on either in bee clubs, they're on chats and stuff, and they like put people down and say, if you want to make $1 million, spend 10 million. Give them your idea going in as the first year. Can you make money? I mean, that's what people that think you got to spend more than you're making.
Right. You can do it. You can be in the black year one. You just a couple things you got to do, and that's it. So thanks again, Don, for all the mentorship. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Greg, I solved that problem with the hole saw. I just put it in my vise and got a good file and put alongside of it, and brought that down to the right size, and they snap in there. You can't move them one way or the other. They're as tight as can be. So
that's a real good idea. I didn't think about that. Yeah, just knock them down.
Yeah, just what it is that to set on the teeth like is just out a little bit, and you don't need all that. So that worked real good for me, and make them just as perfectly tight. They don't leak at all. So I thought I'd mention that.
That's a good idea, and you're right, because the actual body of the hole saw is 50 millimeter, but the teeth are just offset just enough where it makes a difference. So filing, that's a good idea too. Thanks, Ernest.
Okay, and over to Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, I'm sitting here listening to all you guys talk about feeding. I am not feeding my hives yet. Should I be? They've got loads of honey in them. I couldn't even lift the boxes and everything.
I would pull the honey and feed the bees.
Do what?
I would pull the honey and give the bees a place if you've got a queen there and she's laying yet.
Yeah.
Give her a place to lay. Get the honey out. You can always feed it back.
Okay.
People ask me, the same question. I got honey in there. And I just tell them, do you stop eating in the wintertime? The bees got to eat all the time. So they're either storing it or they're consuming it.
Okay. Because it's still really lush and greeny. Go ahead.
She might be getting honey bound.
No, I've looked, and there's empty frames in there.
Eggs in them or empty?
There's empty.
Then you might have a mite problem. You might have to get in there and treat.
Well, I did that last week, and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. But I've got lots of bees, and they're very active, and lots of stored capped honey. And I pulled off what I wanted for as on my honey supers, but in the deeps, there's still lots of honey, and so I haven't started feeding them.
Yeah. I always pull my honey, and you can always feed it back.
Okay.
I want to make sure, and I pull my stuff to singles. I don't run doubles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep it in the freezer then till you need it.
Extract it.
Oh.
I mean, you know, if you got 1 or 2 hives, I mean, you could stack it full of honey, but I'd have to have several hundred freezers. I'd rather put it in barrels,
Yeah.
and feed corn syrup back.
So pull all of their honey, not leave them anything?
Well, you need to leave the outside frames, but if you got honey on the top and honey in the brood chamber, you should be having more bees in that brood chamber. The bees that they make in October and November, those are your spring bees.
Uh-huh.
If they're not laying and you're not getting young bees for spring, those bees you look at now, they might be healthy, but they're going to be dead at the end of December and January.
Right. Okay. Thought I was done extracting for the year. Guess not. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, back to Jay. Go ahead, Jay. You're still muted or something, Jay. There you go. There you go. I can hear you now.
Okay. On the fructose and the buckets, that combination has saved so much time. I was spending 3 or 4 hours a week just mixing
Yeah.
by hand the sugar, then trying to pour it up in pint jars or whatever I was feeding him. When I went to the buckets and then I went to the fructose on, I've got my tote mounted on my pickup with a spout on it where I can just pull up and I can fill it up. I can fill up a bucket in about 4 seconds.
Yep.
And it's just so much faster. Yeah,
And
laugh.
it's money.
Have you got yours set up where you can feed it like that, Greg?
So far, I've got a hose stretched out from it 1.5 inches, and it fills them up. Not that quick. That's about as fast. Steven has a, I don't know what that size. It's got to be darn near. It's at least 3 inches coming off their big tank out of their pump. He filled he filled 300 gallons in 3 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, you talk about quick. I mean, it was impressive. So I have a trash pump set up, or I will. It's not hooked up yet. It's unfortunately I'm down to I think 70 gallons on that. Is all I have left. I can't say no. I'm going to have to learn. I've been telling folks in Ohio, the Fat Bee Man guys, that they're folks that if you need fructose, come see me. We'll get you some. And now I don't have a whole lot for myself, so I probably have to go down again before Thanksgiving and maybe get another tote. But a pump. What size pump do you have on yours, Jay?
I don't have a pump on it. I've got gravity feed on top of it. It's just sitting on my flatbed truck.
Oh, right.
I've got a 2-inch
That's nice.
nozzle coming out and then turned down
Right.
and it's 1.75 inches. So when I pop that plug on that bucket, I just slide it up on it, open the valve, and close it.
He's got something set up like Steven's flatbed.
I was going to say, yeah, because Don, you're doing something similar on your one trailer. It's gravity fed, but you're up, waist height, so it really has a lot of extra head. Then all the weight of then the tote itself, it really comes out quick. It sure is nice though, isn't it?
Oh man.
It doesn't settle. It does. You don't have nothing. No feeder gets plugged up. It's all smooth. It's uniform. Oh man, I wish I had done it sooner, but hey, we can't get to Fat Bee Man speed all at once. We crash and burn.
Oh, but no, that's the greatest thing, along with the buckets. Man, that saves so much time. It's unreal.
And the nice thing about those plugs is if there is no, like a lot of folks ask, what is the magic formula to how many holes, what size? Like there is no magic formula. What you have to do is find a hole that works for you on the size hive you're feeding and how it's either fructose or how you're mixing your sugar to find out that either you want a very slow drip every 8 seconds, or you want just to percolate, or you want it rapid fire. That's all based on whatever you want. The great thing is if you make a hole too big and it's dripping out too quick, you can just take a super glue it right back closed again, or you can hot glue it and you can start over. So that's the nice thing about those plugs. They're so versatile. And then you can just use that same plug to close off your lid in the wintertime and go on down the road. So it saved a lot of time, which we don't have a lot of.
Problem with them, though.
You don't have enough time.
You're
So we're
talking about
trying to get there.
super glue in the hole. If you get electric soldering gun, you can turn it on and just bump the hole, or you could take a knife and set it with a propane torch and just touch it with a knife. Or
that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of ways around everything. Me, I'm gonna do the cheap way.
I'm glad you're having good luck with that, Jay.
I did have one problem. I had my bees go in and they put so much wax on that plug. I started pulling the bucket off and I pulled the plug out. So I've learned I have to slide that hive till enough it's stuck and kind of slide it versus pull it directly up.
Yeah.
I'm good now.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, then I think that'll cover it tonight, unless anybody else has any other questions. Raise your hand or forever keep your peace. Okay, I guess that's it for tonight. So thank you, Don. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for everybody showing up.